this is section 2. In section 1, we talked about MVC and OOP in relation to Magento. And now we're going to talk about event-driven architecture. And we'll be going through this and taking a look at what composes an event-driven architecture system. And what I'd like to point out first, I guess, is that what's the point for having an event-driven architecture? Well, if you have a system that's as big as Magento, you often have a need to get access to the system in any of its various processes. So that really is a problem that EDA solves. Basically, anywhere in the application, no matter what's going on in the current stack of execution, you actually get a mechanism to access either members or processes that are going on in the code. Now, so the basic players in event-driven architecture, you have this, in Magento anyway, is the event, which is the thing that happens, as well as the observer, which is something that's actually watching it happen. And with observers, you get with the observers, you get access to again that point in the code that you really need access to, regardless of anything else that's going on. So that has some strengths and some benefits and some real weaknesses that we'll look at the end of the lesson. Let's see. Now, probably the big characteristic though of this implementation in Magento is that you have this system that pushes the events. Basically, you have something that says, "Hey, this is happening." As opposed to other systems, another approach could be a polling system, which would be from the outside saying, "Hey, is this happening? Hey, is this happening?" Well, you couldn't do that in Magento. There's tons of observers, and that would be incredibly inefficient. So what Magento does is actually just say, "Hey, this is going on, and let me give you the key players that are happening right now." So the advantages, of course, it gives you immediate access to. Say you're in a checkout. It might give you access to the customer object. It might give you access to the quote. And that's great because that whole checkout process, as we'll see, is fairly complex. You can really spend probably the least amount of time doing EDA as far as making something happen. But the drawback, of course, is that because it's so disconnected from the logical flow, well, guess what? It's really complex in that you can have several different events firing at any given time, any number of observers observing those events, changing data, doing things, and you don't necessarily know the order that they're going to happen or necessarily what's going on. It may not be immediately apparent from stepping through the code. So it's just another place that you have to debug. That's the big disadvantage. So, and then the other disadvantage, of course, is that having this event-driven architecture, having this system dispatching events, checking to see if there are any observers, well, it's just more processing load. So, this is one of my favorite slides, actually, in this entire course, and it's really because this is exactly what happens in Magento. You have the execution stack, and then along the way, well, you'd have any number of events firing. There are lots and lots of events. But typically what happens is the event is dispatched, and the event architecture will basically check the configuration to see if there are any observers. In this case, there's several observers, and you can have any number of them. And what happens generally are the key pieces of data, the key objects, are passed in here, and then each of these observers may or may not do something to it. May interface with a remote system, who knows? So the big point that you should take away here is that you have these observers, and they're all sequential. So basically, the execution flow jumps from here to here, and then sequentially through all of these. Now, of course, if you have a fatal error, you're going to die. It's not like this breaks and you just go back here and go on your merry way. So if you have an observer that's working again in checkout, you have to be really careful, because if something goes bad, people can't buy things, and your customers are going to be really upset. Okay, so this is one of our favorite exercises, And it really, I think it drives home this concept, because one of the big things that we see in this course is a confusion about actions and events. So remember that the event is the thing. So we're going to divide you guys into 3 different teams, and we're going to discuss, we'll discuss these 3 different things. A soccer match or some other thing. We've used cricket. That you can take any of these and run with them. So basically we're going to have this environment that's analogous to Magento. Yeah. So we're going to have this environment which is analogous to Magento. So this ecosystem of the code. So you'll have a soccer match. You'll have cricket. You'll have a kitchen or a bar or a police station. The police station, by the way, is probably the easiest one to do because police stations have dispatchers. So what we're going to do is actually just look through the components and identify what's going on, what the dispatcher or dispatchers are, and what kind of processes that can trigger. So I'll divide you guys up into a few different groups, and we'll proceed.